yet who are humble, who understand that without God they are nothing. That everything comes from God, nothing comes from them. They are called to be obedient. If God has put them in a position of leadership, they need to steward that humbly and faithfully to God.
No, y'all know we're in for a good time tonight, just based on those introductions. So, a lot of times, so how it's going to go is I'm going to ask a question. So it's based on questions that were written out last week at class. So, and if they're similar in nature, I'll just ask about the concept. Okay, maybe not the specific question. So I ask it to an individual, but if either one of y'all want to chime in, then I'll look before I move on to the next question to see if you have something to say. So that's pretty much the process. Now this question wasn't asked. This is my own personal question, okay? Because a lot of times we don't understand the totality, the ecosystem, right? Or actually what's going on outside of our four walls. We spend a lot of time here. We do a lot of ministry here. And a lot of people come to us to do stuff. And then we go to where it's familiar, right? We go to other Baptist churches or things like that. But it's so much stuff going on around us. And we have Dr. Meyer that actually wrote the book on kind of where the state of everything is. And everybody, I think he's passing out these stat sheets. So you can pass these stat sheets out to everybody to show why he kind of talks about just where the landscape is. I think that's a good place to start. And, you know, does leadership have anything to do with it?
Oh, absolutely it does, because the context is important. How we lead, is determined partly by the context. So, who's around you, we don't change the content of our message, but we might change the form. Form and content are different. And so there's different styles of worship, there's different leadership styles, but guess what? There's one message, there's one gospel. So the gospel doesn't change. So don't say that I'm changing that, because I'm not. But the context changes. This neighborhood changes. I grew up in Richfield. Okay, when I lived in Richfield, there were like 15 non-white people in my high school, 1,500. But Richfield's not like that anymore. It's 74% non-white. It's shifted. And so if people are still ministering like when I lived there, they're not going to reach that community. So the neighborhood shift. People move around. Now I live in Burnsville. Burnsville, again, my house was built in 1970. It's like suburban. But guess what? Half the people in Burnsville are non-white. So is it urban? Is it suburban? Well, it's kind of both. And we don't even have ideas or terms for these. We have to make up stuff. So things are changing, and so we have to see our community if we're going to reach it. And so, again, eyes to see, ears to hear. So if you look on the sheet that I handed you, you can see some changes on the sheet. Number one in our city is Catholics. Not surprising, it's kind of a Catholic Lutheran city, Twin Cities. But number two is Muslims. And in 10 years, there will be more Muslims than Catholics in the Twin Cities. I'm not a prophet, so don't stone me if I'm wrong. But in about 10 years, there will be more Muslims than Catholics, more Muslim mosques than Catholic churches. We need to reach Muslims. We need to pray for them. We don't need to be afraid of them. They're made in the image of God. We have to listen and learn, talk to them, eat with them, ask questions. We have more Buddhists than Baptists. We have more Jews and Hindus in the Assembly of God. And again, I know this is hard to hear, but this is reality. We have to be afraid of it. God's still in control. God's bringing these people here. Okay? He wants them here. This is part of his plan. You and I can't go to Somalia if we want to. But God brings Somalis right to our city. They're one of the most hardest people groups in the world to reach. So we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should say, wow, this is the greatest time in history. I can reach out to people that I can't even go to their country. They can't even go back. And so God brings them literally to our doorsteps of our churches. And they're different cultures. In the gospel, there's three kinds of cultures. There's honor-shame culture. The This is honor shame. You guys honored me, titles, clapping, that's honor shame. Guilt, innocence, culture. The Bible talks about guilt, innocence. Romans, we're all guilty. But power, fear, miracles, casting out demons. The Bible talks to all three. But most of us focus on just one of them. White people mostly focus on guilt, innocence. African Americans honored shame. And the Hmong and animistic cultures more power, fear. But the Bible speaks to all three. Jesus spoke all three. He used different messages. So again, I'm not saying change your content, but you could change some of the, maybe you preach on some different passages, or you do different things. But again, the neighborhoods are changing, and you don't be afraid of it. We're not only supposed to be in fear of God, awe of God. So we're not supposed to be afraid. And Satan works through ignorance. If we don't know they're there, we have a saying, you can't do the prayer, care, share unless you know they're there. You can rap to it too. But how do you pray for people? I have Minnesota nice humor, so if you think it was a joke, it was. So just laugh, okay? It's not going to be funny, just laugh. But, how do you pray for people if you don't know they exist? How do you care for them if you don't know they exist? How do you share the gospel if you don't know they exist? So you got to have some knowledge. You got to know who's there. And then Satan also works through ignorance, fear, oh, I'm afraid of Muslims. Oh, I don't want to talk to them. But they're honor shame. If you talk to them, they will talk to you. And if you ask them to have a meal, they're not going to say no. They're going to say yes, sir, because they're honor shame. And so don't be afraid to ask. They're gonna like it. And ask them questions. In the Bible, they asked Jesus 183 questions. He answered 3. He'd say, "What do you think?" Or he'd tell a story, or he'd say, "Well, what do they say?" He dialogue. So dialogue is key. We got to learn to talk. And then, by the way, Jesus asked 307 questions back. He would ask them questions. What's going on? And so the third thing is Satan works through hate. We're not supposed to hate even our enemies. So we're not supposed to hate Muslims or Buddhists or anyone. And then Satan also works through division. If we're weak, all of our churches are weak. We don't come together. We don't talk to each other. We don't know each other. We're not going to reach many people. So we have to come together. So this is a great thing. Your pastors have always been very kingdom, very focused. This church has always been a kingdom church. And God's going to use that. God's going to use that to bring people together.
Amen.
Anyway.
You preach it. Would y'all like to say anything on the changing landscape and the role of leadership in the changing landscape?
That's kind of hard to follow, but I can black church, and never thought we would see the kind of diversity in churches now or in the neighborhood, because it was mostly a black neighborhood.
Right.
And grew up at a time when the white churches said we'll never mix with black churches. So that's just the way I grew up. And so in coming to Minnesota, to make a long story short, the first school I worked at had 6 or 7 different languages being spoken in the middle school. So the first thing they made me do was take a class in human relations, so I could just learn the different cultures and how to deal with them. And that helped me tremendously. So when I came as pastor at this church, the first thing I want to do is get to know the community.
Yeah.
Get to know the landscape, get to know who we're actually dealing with. And that's why you've seen me all over the place, because I think it's important in order to be able to minister to the people, we've got to know who the people are.
Yes.
So the landscape has totally changed, and it's still changing daily. So our leadership styles must change. And as I said, I grew up in a black church, and I could just say, no, we're just trying to reach black people. That's not the case anymore. We're trying to reach the world, reach the kingdom of Christ. That's what we're trying to do.
So, Dr. Tim, you said y'all in the business of building the next generation of leaders. There is, as you know, an argument that's still going on that's saying, are leaders born or are they made? Right? And it goes back and forth. And there are people that's here tonight and that's going to be watching that want to know. Young people, and the churches, we need young people to step up. We need people that are not in leadership roles to step up. So one of these questions that was asked is, how do you know God is calling you to lead? And what do you do?
Well, First, the answer to your initial question, are leaders born or are leaders made? The answer is yes. And I'm not being cute. There are some leaders who are born. They have a natural, God-given set of character traits that just people want to follow them. And that's, we should rejoice in that God does that. But the flip side is that every person in this room is called to lead something.
Yes. Yeah.
Every person,
Yeah.
man, woman, child,
Yeah.
you are called to lead something. And so we can all improve and enhance our ability to lead. And in fact, even the people who are born leaders, they may need more help in other ways. They may have the natural inclination to lead in ways that people want to follow, but that doesn't mean they are equipped in all the ways that are important, especially in the ways that I talked about earlier: humility and courage and selflessness. And those are the kinds of things that we have to grow in through the power of the Holy Spirit at work in us, through Christ in us, because those are not natural. Those are supernatural.
Amen.
Those qualities. And so that's what I love about teaching in the class that I teach on leadership at our school, is that, you know, there are some people who just think, well, I'm not comfortable in front of a group. I get nervous if I'm expected to speak, or I just don't feel called in that way. And to that person, I would say, that may be true, that you may not be called to an upfront ministry, like a pastor or a teacher or someone else, but you can lead your family, you can lead your children, you can lead your neighbor friends, you can lead those who God has put in your life, because as believers in Jesus Christ, it's our responsibility, all of us, to encourage others to follow Jesus as well, and to grow in faith, and to grow in maturity. And so, there's my long-winded answer to the question.
Well, I think the answer to that, leaders are born or made, I think the answer is yes. I can say I really think I was born to be a leader. And I look back at my early grade school years. I was the leader on the playground. I was the leader at my church, really, at 15 years old, Sunday school teacher. I was the captain of the football team. The list goes on and on. But still, I attended 4 different universities and 3 different seminaries. And I was counting the other day, over 30 different workshops I attended over the years on leadership, trying to grow as a leader over my career. Because I realized that, yes, I was born, but there's some things that I still needed in order to be able to continue to be able to lead at a pace where God wants me to lead in today's time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's both and. You can have natural gifts, and there's different kinds of leaders, like Tim said. You know, a lot of people are behind the scenes, and the pastor can't do everything. He's not supposed to do everything. And so all the gifts are given, spiritual gifts, and God gives us talents, He gives us personalities. And yeah, we all have some area of leadership, some skill sets that God wants to utilize. And to me, no gift's better than the other, because they all work together. It's the body. And they free people up to do other things. Like, some people say, I don't have to get to evangelism. Well, if you don't, that's great, but partner with someone who does. You might have to get the hospitality. You can make the meal. They'll bring the people. And they'll come, and then, you know, so all these gifts work together. And I think, you know, yeah, we have to be continual leaders. I was saying that learners are earners. They earn God's affection, and they earn people's respect. So learners are earners, and readers are leaders. There's nothing new under the sun. So, you know, we have to learn from other leaders, good and bad. And then writers are fighters. See, this will preach.
You're going to have to write some of that down for
But,
us.
right, you know, writers are fighters, so we're going to change the world. You know, if you want something to outlive you, you got to write a book. You know, your tweets aren't going to outlive you. You know, your texts aren't going to outlive you. But, you know, we're reading stuff from 1897, that book on leadership that she mentioned. And so we can keep learning, we can keep refreshing. And we learn the principles. Don't learn a bunch of tactics. Tactics will change. This Warren Wiersbe said, methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, and principles never do. So we learn the principles of leadership, and we can apply them anywhere, any place, any time. But if we learn a bunch of kind of tactics and or cookie cutter, that doesn't go very far. Because it'll change, the next generation, go, we don't want to do that, or we don't like that. So you learn principles. Biblical principles are timeless. So we look for those books that teach those, like you guys were talking about, those biblical principles. So I think that's where Dr. Fred is a success. He finds these books that teach these principles that are timeless for all generations, all people. Anyways.
Well, I think we need a book on some of them sayings. Right? Miss Darlene brought her auntie tonight. You know, Reverend Bolden, like the king of sayings, right? You know, he's like, I'm not all right, I'm some right. You know? And I met what's your aunt name? Aunt Cassie tonight. I said, Aunt Cassie, how you doing? She said, well, I'm hopping, but I ain't stopping. You know? So now when somebody asks me how you doing, I'm gonna say, I'm writing and fighting. I'm learning and earning, you know. Reading and leading, yeah. All right, so Pastor Russell, I've watched you my whole life and followed you around forever, watching you, and you know I've seen you being a servant leader, right? So y'all actually answered a question that was already asked in terms of what do you do to get better as a leader. So they've already answered that question within that one. But in terms of servant leadership, I'm going to put two questions together. One is, why are servant leaders so difficult to find right now in the church? And the second thing is that when you are a servant leader, a lot of people take advantage of that. Yes. You know, being a servant leader. And so what are some things that you do to maintain a positive environment, even when things are hectic, in the context of being still staying consistent with who you are as a servant leader?
Well, you just answered the question. I stay consistent with who I am. Because I know, number one, I know I've been saved. Number two, I know God called me to preach. And I worked in those areas to make sure that I could strengthen that. And number three, I have prepared myself to be a leader. And like I said from the very beginning, I cannot say that I love God and don't love his people. Right. And if I love his people, look at what Jesus did. He went around just serving people. He's like, I came to serve, not to be served. And that's who I am. I try to reach out to people everywhere I go and within the confines of this church, but also across the country. I must do the work of the Lord, regardless of what anybody says. I know a lot of people out there don't agree with decisions I make, with things I say, but that's been the case in everywhere I've gone. Everybody didn't always agree, but you being a servant leader because they want you to be something else, which is totally out of my context. I told you from the very beginning that I used to be a confrontational person in somebody's face all the time, but that's not who I am. I feel totally out of place trying to be that kind of person because I know I love God and I love his people and I want to see his people. I want to see everybody in this church right here tonight be a functional, productive Christian. In order for me to do that, then I got to love you. I got to try to bring stuff like this your way with Dr. Fred. I know this has helped us in the past, so I'm trying to bring us to a point where we can really, really learn more, do more, and now talk about how we're going to how it's hard to find servant leaders today, because people really don't believe in Jesus Christ. Yes. That's the best I can say. People, they talk a lot about it, but if you believe in Jesus and believe the works of Jesus and watch what he did throughout his ministry, you're going to be a servant leader.
I think Tim's thinking I'll answer. I think Dr. Russell's right. Service is a key. Jesus came to do three things: seek, serve, and save. That's it. So we should seek others, seek others, serve them, not serve us, but service. A lot of us think it's about us. It ain't about us. It's about the King and it's about others. That's the two greatest commandments. We're number 3. We're not number 2. We're not number 1. And the Holy Spirit saves, but we can talk to them. We can share it. We can, and a lot of people won't listen to us until we serve them. So being a servant is key, and you can never serve too much, but you're right, people can take advantage. And so it's hard. Part of being a leader is to say no to some things. And not in a mean way, but if people are taking advantage, I usually give people the benefit of the doubt and I help them, whatever. But if it becomes the point where they're taking advantage, I will discuss it with them. And I'll just say, hey, I don't think this is a two-way street here. And they don't have to serve me, but it can't just be give me more, give me more, give me more. They have to serve others too. And so I think, we serve so they can serve. It's not they serve so they can consume. If they're just consuming it, that's the problem. We need to confront them. And so we have to kind of serve so they can serve others.
Yes.
Well, servant leadership has been a very big topic for the last 20 years or so, and many books have been written about the topic, and most Christian leaders use that phrase in some way or another. I guess what I would add to what's already been said is that, and I think John mentioned early in his comments, that it's not about techniques, it's a heart issue. And there's a temptation even to turn servant leadership into a prideful act.
Project or something.
Because you want people to see you being a servant. And so I have to ask my own heart, I said, why am I doing this? Am I doing this so that I'll be noticed by other people at how much of a servant I am? Or am I willing to do this even if nobody else knows I've done that?